We are going to get started. Thank you all for coming on the holiday weekend. We almost put out exactly the right number of chairs. We're counting on 3 more people coming during the course of the event because there's 3 empty chairs. So this is we're going to do a panel on how to reform the Clermont GOP, how to ensure republicanism and conservatism can survive in Clermont County long into the future and not go the way of so many counties where they end up being transformed into blue counties because of people moving to them from blue counties predominantly. So I want to start. I'm going to start though with this just for humor. Then Mr. Sheriff Leahy's going to say some words. But if you haven't seen this commercial, you got to see this commercial, and it's actually a product of the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. campaign.
Are you or your loved ones suffering from illnesses such as TDS, also known as Trump derangement syndrome? Do you dismiss or deny the current issues facing our country, such as historic inflation, illegal immigration, corporate corruption, World War III escalations, and the chronic disease epidemic? Are you willing to elect someone who was the least popular vice president in modern history, and who offers no policy or vision for America simply because your brain keeps telling you anyone but Trump? If so, you might be struggling from TDS. Introducing independence. Independence allows you the freedom to finally think independently once again. Instead of believing everything you hear from the mainstream media, independence allows for constructive critical thinking.
I used to hear people on the news say things like,
Donald Trump and the movement he has encouraged are a threat to democracy.
And I instantly believed it. With independence, I now realize the media is run by the Democrat elite, who are a corrupt oligarchy that censors free speech, silences political opponents, supports forever wars, and abandons democracy by anointing its candidates.
Independence may not be for everyone. If you enjoy being lied to about your president's cognitive abilities, support Orwellian totalitarianism, or are excited about communist fiscal policy, independence may not be right for you. Common side effects of independence may include an awakening of rational thought, successfully identifying propaganda, freedom of choice, loss of hatred, anti-narcissistic behavior, and love of democracy.
I used to blindly hate whoever my party was running against. I didn't care about facts or policy because I was hopelessly indoctrinated. With independence, I'm much more interested in policies that uphold democracy, and I truly care about the health of our country and its citizens.
Ask your doctor if independence is right for you, and enjoy your freedoms once again.
Can we get that?
Okay, so when a liberal, RFK Jr., is putting out commercials like that, there's still hope, right? There's still hope that the country could come together. With that, I want to turn over and thank Sheriff Steve Leahy for coming to make some introductory remarks, and I will turn it over to him.
Now, I will say this, I'd much rather see my picture right there rather than on his website. I would stay here longer. I do have another engagement I have to go to, and you'll get a kick out of this. So my wife runs a local golf course, and this time of year, all of her seasonal college help all go back to school. So a couple of years ago, she called me like on a Saturday morning, and she's like, "Hey, what you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm just going to watch some football and, you know, get something to eat here." And she's like, "Could you come over and help a little bit?" I'm like, "Where?" "At the golf course." Okay, all right. So I went over there, and she had me cleaning golf carts. And the funny part about it was before she goes, "Hey, we're going to have to get you on payroll because per company policy, you can't do any work unless you're an employee and you're clocked in." I'm like, "Really? What do you pay?" And she goes like $9 an hour. And I'm like, "Okay." So I clock in and I'm sweating my ass off for like 8 hours, and people are showing up, people, you know, muckety mucks from the county playing golf, and they're like, "Are you a sheriff?" "Yeah." "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "You guys don't pay me good enough. I'm supplementing my income." So that was the big, "Hey, can we get a picture?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So fast forward to the end of the year. So I get, as we're getting ready to do our taxes, I get a 1099, and I look at it, and it's from the golf course. And I said, what is this?" And she goes, you got a 1099? And I go, yeah, it's for $60. And so it cost me probably $200 to have my taxes done. Adding that, you know, they charge you for every little thing. And I'm like, okay, no more. I'm not on, I don't care. I'm not clocking in. I'm not doing anything. You're by dinner. So that's the funny part about it. So from here, I'm going home changing and I got to go work the golf course. So I do have some stuff together, and please forgive me because I'm going to follow it, because some of the stuff is really important. I kind of wanted to go kind of at a time, a nice timeline for you. So when Chris and Bill reached out to ask if I would come up and speak to this, I thought, okay. So I said, wow, it appears the old saying that politics do indeed make strange bedfellows. Who would have thought that Chris and Bill would have been able to come together for a common goal, which is change? Bill, if you recall, years ago, I urged you to examine your relationship with Chris and what you were wanting to accomplish and how to get that done. You ultimately have done it. It's called communicating, right? Now for me, let's make it clear. Over the last 7.8 years, not that I'm counting, I've had, let's say, some very spirited discussions with both Chris and Bill about a variety of topics, sometimes agreeing to disagree. I'll give it to them both. They are passionate, driven, and committed. So you may ask, why am I here? I think engagement is good. That's why I'm here, because I'm always looking to get a better understanding of those my office serve, and when I have the opportunity to communicate what direction my office is going, then it's my responsibility as the elected sheriff to do so. I've spoken at a variety of things, and over the years, from the GOP party to Friends of Liberty, to the West Clermont group, now this, because I want to hear from people, and I want to try to get the message out of our office, of me. I can't get better. I can't provide a better service by not engaging and communicating with you and citizens, especially those who critique us. I simply can't be living in a bubble of praise all the time. And as an elected official, sometimes we have a tendency to hear always nice things from people, because that's how it operates. And you have to make certain that you are exposing yourself to other views and other opinions. So in politics, we are constantly in need of changing, improving, bettering ourselves, because our world is always changing. We need to engage different people with different age groups who don't always agree with us on every topic, but that's okay. I think welcoming different ideals and respecting them is important. We should share a common goal and direction. That's why we're here today, to keep our political ideals alive and to move our agenda as Republicans forward. How do we do this? By communicating. What we're doing today, we're communicating. We are sometimes given what I call the best of worst options at the polls. Why is that? Because we have failed to develop qualified candidates. How do we improve this? We must engage, we must recruit better, we've got to get our message out, and we got to listen to different ideals, again, by communicating. I've been a police officer, a deputy sheriff, for almost 34 years, and the last 7.8 as the county sheriff. When I came in, became the sheriff, well, actually with every step of the way, every time I got promoted, I was always making my exit strategy to move on to the next phase. Because I always subscribe to what's called the Mack truck theory. And I look at that now as your county sheriff, that at any point, one of my administrators or somebody who's in a critical role, even myself, can step out and get run over by a Mack truck, and we have to have a process for that replacement and have the best people available. Now, for me, if you didn't know it, I am leaving. When I made that announcement to other county sheriffs, a lot of them said that I was crazy, that I should stay another 3 terms, another 12 years, because a lot of them said they would stay for 20 plus years. But I reflected, and I thought I had accomplished everything that I had set to do. I believe in term limits. I don't know if anyone ever saw my first initial announcement that I was retiring, but I believe in term limits, because It's just good leaders need to know when to go. I know good leaders need to have an exit plan. At the sheriff's office, we've been working on it for over a year. I also believe in identifying talent and having a succession plan. I have done that, and 2 terms is enough for me. Now Chris Stratton can make it even better. It's a weird, I was explaining to my wife this morning, it's a weird situation to be able to look the man or woman who's going to replace you in the eyes daily and understand that your time is coming to an end and theirs is coming forward. And that's a weird sense, but it's a fulfilling sense if you're a good leader. Chris is not my chief deputy because he's a yes man. He is because we work well together. He adds value, especially when he gives me a different perspective. He has the energy that I no longer have to continue to keep taking my office to the next level. You deserve that as citizens. My staff deserve it, and I deserve it. I believe in leaving things better than when I found them. I think I've done that at the office. Here's some things that we have accomplished since I became sheriff, and most of these, unfortunately, were after Bill Brewer's death. That was an unfortunate event, but that caused me to re-examine my role and my priorities as sheriff. It gave me a new sense of purpose. And I don't want to bore you, but I'll go over about 10 to 15 things that have been really important that most people don't really recognize and understand. Our office, the sheriff's office, I call it, as we were doing these processes of implementing some of these changes, I told staff, if you go down to the river and you watch a barge move and change course, it doesn't turn on a dime. It's a slow process, and it starts way back to make the bend way up in front. We implemented a drone program, mental health access in our jail to include medicated addiction treatment for inmates. I've increased staffing close to 30%. I've increased our pay over 25%. These are not exact numbers, and some maybe a little bit higher. We built a state-of-the-art training facility with a computer shooting scenario program. We overhauled our range, had been in existence since 1980. We modernized it. We have state-of-the-art firearms and rifles in all of our deputies' cars. I have a new fleet of vehicles, body cameras in all of my patrol staff. Over half of my staff at the jail now have body cameras. We have just recently got an inmate tracking software system to put on inmates and track them and be able to scan them so we know where they're at a particular moment, and to make sure that our staff is doing the checks like they're supposed to be, a checks and balance. A dedicated training budget. If you can believe, when I became sheriff, we never had a dedicated training budget. We never was given money to train our staff. Health and wellness include mental health programs for all of our staff. In my training facility, we have a gym that is accessible 24/7. I brought somebody who was doing their master's program together to do a study at the office and put together that wellness program for sleeping, eating, exercising. I've almost doubled our tactical team, which a good portion of it's made up of other agencies in the county. They have top grade equipment. We have quarterly union meetings where I meet with my 4 different bargaining units, and that keeps me to give the perspective of what's going on with my staff. I don't hear it through filter avenues. One of the things that we talked about change, you can substitute different professions in this, but I laugh because there are things that cops hate. The way things were, the way things are, and the way things could be. So change has been not easy at the office. Again, in kind of closing, teammates challenge each other to be better individually and as a group. Teams thrive when merit is what determines who takes the field, not who is the coach's kid or the next in line. I have enjoyed my time as the sheriff. I appreciate all the support. Like I said, I do have to leave. I can take a couple questions real quick if anybody's got anything. Sure.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Thank you for giving us your accomplishments. I mean, you saw, I don't know if you heard about our podcast, and, we rated our officials, and there was one complaint that I had, is that, we in the Central Committee, we know you guys, but really don't know what the innovation was or the accomplishments was. So I really appreciate you giving us a rundown of what you have done as your term as sheriff.
Over the years, we've tried to, at times, accommodate the Central Committee or other organizations that come out and take a look at some of the changes that we've implemented. It's really a hard way. It's really hard to get the message out to everybody. We laugh because I'm friends with Sheriff Jones, but we are polar opposites. He likes to be out in the forefront. He likes to say a lot of things, whether they're inflammatory or to rally support or whatever. And he likes to list his accomplishments, which are great because that's his style. I'm a little more reserved. I believe my spot, the sheriff, is judged upon the community as a whole of what we do and what kind of services that we provide. Knowing that we're not perfect. I mentioned there about being critiqued. You can attest, Chris can attest, Bill can attest, Mr. Cooper can attest, I'm accessible. I answer my phone. I listen to people, I talk to people. I don't always have the answer that they might want or believe that they deserve, but it doesn't mean that it fell on deaf ears. And through different time frames at the office, it's not always been easy, but I engage people. Chris will engage people. He is less patient than I, but that is something that he'll grow into. And but I don't think that's anything special. I think it's what your county sheriff owes you. I think that as an elected official, I owe you that minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to listen to you and give you the best answer I can at that time.
It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
And that's one of the things. I know that, again, in hindsight, we can always look to do things better. What's this about, this meeting here? This is about doing things better. It's about moving forward, and I think elected officials lose sight of that. How can you not know when it's time to go? I just don't, it's a foreign concept to me. I don't understand. I looked back in my career and I kind of put a loose timeline together. I changed about every 5 years because I would accomplish what I wanted, and frankly, I would get bored. And boredom's not good for anybody in any position, and particularly not an elected official. So you got to keep striving. Now people ask me, what's your plan? What are you going to do? They're constantly changing. Originally, I was packing up and moving to Florida immediately. Now I'm not. I'm going to be here because things are ever changing, like all of our lives are. People get different jobs and different requirements, and people get sick. So it's always changing. I know I'll be here for a while, and I know that I will help Chris Stratton, who I think is an excellent person, an excellent man, and I think he'll do an excellent job as the county sheriff. I'm happy to be here for that. I want to be a part of that. And, so for us, that constant growth, that constant change, very important, very important. And it shouldn't just stop at the sheriff's office. It should be every place. And as the public and as voters, we do have control. We do have control. So I hope that answered that.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what's in plan for Chris and for the county when he becomes sheriff? Are there anything specific that is, innovative ideas that he's got that he wants to accomplish?
Yeah, so he has a hard act to follow, I will say, because we've done a lot. But he will, and because there's always more to do. And so I remember back to when I announced that I was running with Tim Rodenberg. I was part of the ability to build a foundation for that. And one of the things I had said originally was that I wanted to build on that foundation, not really knowing exactly what that meant. And I didn't get clarity, and it took a tragic act to really put that together. So Chris has got some ideals, and some of them are about, and he hasn't really made it public, but some of it, he's bringing canines into the jail facility. Very, very, a very good move. I didn't put on there, I had purchased a body scanner when I first became sheriff, the state-of-the-art body scanner. Those aren't perfect. So there's always these layers. We've never had canines in the jail facility, and this is something he's planning for and in the process of doing right now, because as he was discussing it, I said, get it rolling now. This is your ideal, not mine, but let's get the process started now so you can hit the ground running. The big thing is that, again, we've looked at our county drug use, county drug task force. Can it be better? Yes, it can be better. That's going to be one of his projects. Another one is he'll have to look at, I did a manpower study about 1.5 years ago, and that manpower study was related to mainly our jail facility and the aging parts of it. The jail is over three generations. There's 3 generations put together, some went from the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. So that stuff is always changing technology-wise, and it just gets old and it's breaking down. So at some point, the county's going to have to grapple with, and the studies that I had done is showing that, it showed that. So that's going to be one of the things that as we start putting that together, the ideals, the county starts putting together ideals about what are priorities. One of them is going to be about renovating and or building a substantially newer jail, modifying that. That'll be within Chris's period of time. And I've told him it's kind of like being in an AA. It's going to be one day at a time for him being a sheriff. But the first term, you can't even think about a second term till you get through the first term. So these things he's looking at and understanding and putting it together. And to be the sheriff, you're fortunately a lot of people were in place because we've had that. I've said this, when Chris has a stomach ache, I feel it. We're that close together, and we've been together for 30+ years. Now, I don't think he feels it reversed, because I always have a stomach ache and he doesn't. But he's had the ability, and I've had the ability to bounce things off each other and say, hey, this person, this is becoming, that's going to be a really good future sergeant or captain or whatever. So, hey, if I left tomorrow, who would you want to run this? That person. Great ideal. So we've done that. So he's got a really good foundation. Of course, he's going to have some people in key spots that I didn't have. I had the luxury of, when I was becoming the sheriff and I knew it, I knew who my chief deputy was. I had a whole lot of people in the tri-state calling me wanting to be my chief deputy. And it was an easy, I got my man. I got my person. And it has done well. And again, Chris has done, I don't want this to become the Chris hour because it's about me right now, right? No, he has done really, really well, and I look forward to it. And I know he's got a lot of. I think you've been a part of some of the stability centers and stuff like that for mental health. As a county sheriff, let me tell you something: the issues with mental health is not over-exaggerated. Substance abuse and mental health run hand in hand, and this country is overwhelmed with it, to say the least. In county sheriffs, we feel the brunt of it because simply when there's no place else for somebody to go, they end up in our facility, and we are not the place for that. We are not the place. I think my medical budget is close to $2 million a year contract, and we cannot get enough. We do have mental health treatment and doctors that come on, but and counselors and access for when people first come in for screenings, but it's simply not enough. These people really need to be someplace else to help them. That is going to be a big challenge because, like anything, that first initial, oh, I want to do this, it's keeping that energy up. Change, yeah, talking about change, easy. It's instituting and keeping the energy driving. I go back to Chris. I know he's got me on I'm going to ask him one day when I retire. I know he's got me on an alarm, and like every 30 days, he reaches back out on something. So it's that you've got to keep that energy rolling. You've got to keep it going to implement change, constant. And so for that, we have to have the energy to get that done. And that's going to take a commitment from a lot of people, and it's going to take money. And it does cost money. But you know what I say is it's much better than having somebody who's in the custody of the county sheriff who ends up having a use of force against them, or they end up dying in our custody. It's much better to have addressed the issue way ahead before that. Because please remember, the police and our correction officers are not doctors, and they're not psychologists. Sometimes when things happen, people expect that that's what they are, or they're trained in that capacity. We're trained a little bit in about everything, but that's about it. So I think those are some of the key points, and that's a lot to bite on. It's a lot to bite on. You know, the operation part of it, we've got it rolling. We've got it rolling. Constant tweaking, but yeah, those are some heavy deals.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sheriff, I wanted to speak with the Sheriff's Department for several years. What is the Sheriff's Department's stance against protecting the citizens against federal overreach? And the reason that I ask this is because I have many special public records requests received from the Public Health Department that they would have received extra grant money to implement what they call a biosurveillance program that worked with local law enforcement to enforce mandates, such as walking or not, entering stores and stuff, and people not complying with the lock at home during COVID. Did you have? I mean, I'm
not familiar with that. I have no. That would be a first that I'd ever heard of that. I will tell you that during COVID, it was very complicated. I spent a lot of time. My approach on it was common sense, probably like everybody here. With my staff, I never mandated anything. It was, if you feel that you want to wear a mask, there's a pile. If you want a vaccination, there's where you go get your vaccination. And that's how we treat it. I will tell you that I did get a little blowback from some staff, really their family, because my stance was this, and I fall back on friends of mine and other county sheriffs had during you remember Hurricane Katrina? Well, on Hurricane Katrina, a lot of the local police packed their stuff up and left, right? And it became lawless. And hearing the stories and talk to them, those officers and sheriffs who sent people down there said it was just horrific. So my stance on it was, okay, if this is an emergency and we don't really know what it actually is, I'm not closing shop up. My staff is going to be working. And because you have the expectation is when something is going on, there's a problem, that you want to look outside and you want to see a police officer out there. You want to see somebody on the street corner that you're paying for that protects you. That's in the big picture. So I let my staff make their decisions on that. And I was constantly getting from both sides, why are your people not wearing masks? Why are you people wearing masks? And you know what? Good.
I'm just going to say that what I was seeing in this stuff that I received from public records requests was they were going to try to implement using local law enforcement a surveillance program using grant money. And I understand that the sheriff is the one that protects us from federal overreach.
Well, I can tell you, so in a process of, there's always these perceptions of what the sheriff has the ability and doesn't have the ability to do. So in a matter of that, when that stuff all first started going, we had several, Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, we had several conference calls with almost 88 county sheriffs at one time, and you can imagine it's a pain in the ass listening to everybody like, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we were not going to be the tool for governmental control. In fact, we were pushing back. You know, we certainly weren't going to be the mass police, and we certainly were going to trounce on people's rights, and we weren't going to be the health department. We weren't going to do things that we weren't supposed to be doing. And one of the things is, to my staff, I related it to a story many years ago. I won't say any names, but I was a lowly sergeant, and we had a flood, and we had a boss who said, we're going to go remove these people, we're going to do A, B, and C for their own good. Okay, so if we do it, and this is it's a lot more in depth, but it's just a simple story. I made the wise ass comment that said, oh, what happens if they don't want to leave or comply? What happens if there's a shootout? So how do we explain that? Hey, we're here to save you from potentially harm's way or drowning, but I had to kill you. I mean, you know, so the overreach and sometimes the government killing to fly with a sledgehammer, your county sheriff's not going to do that. I was not going to do that, and I know my next person is not going to do that. And a vast majority of the sheriffs, and you know what, 88 county sheriffs, not all of them are Republican conservatives. There are Democrats, there are some left-leaning, but they're all pretty much on the same page that there is a separation between the federal government, state, and county. And as county sheriffs, my responsibility is not to enforce stuff for the federal government.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Just last question, it's kind of related to that. When it came to like private businesses, you know, I went into a place, a business, and they wanted me to mask to be in there. I was like, didn't want to do it, and they were pushy and persistent, and pretty much made me wear a mask in their business, and it was a bookstore. And so I'm just wondering if I simply just did not comply and did it, you know, very peaceably, would that be a disturbing the peace?
I wouldn't say, and again, going back and addressing stuff, I mean,
would that be, there's a police authority over that, that's what I'm saying.
So, well, again, and I've answered these questions before for people. What you have to be conscious of is that when you go to a private business, they can basically say you have the right to do this or that, to frequent my business or to come into my business. And so smoking marijuana is legal now, right? But you can't take marijuana and go into public and or to a private business where somebody says you can't do that and say, well, it's my right. It's legally, I can smoke. So you got to be careful about getting yourself in a position of trespassing. Now, the way that we fortunately, if we had something like that, we mediated it, and we just said, listen, another day, another dollar, at some point, you can fight this in another matter. Don't give the ability to somebody to test you or take and arrest you for something that you believe, but at the end of the day, you might end up being in a situation where it is a good arrest, and you don't have the right to do that. So what I fell back on is I didn't go to places that they required me to wear a mask. Now, let's clarify the error. I have an autoimmune disorder issue, and I get sick very easily. So I took some precautions, and but I didn't go places that I wasn't sure, and I wasn't going to go places where I had to wear a mask and stuff like that. I just wasn't going to do it. Now, of course, on planes, I traveled. They were on you. No choice. So it's that balance.
So obviously, I think you can make the argument, though, that when it comes to masks, it's different than smoking a joint in someone's private.
Yeah, I could, but at the end of the day, these places have a right to deny it.
You can tell them to wear a mask. If they're trying to protect themselves, they should wear a mask then. They shouldn't be making you wear a mask, because if they feel they're in danger, they should wear a mask. That's the point I'm making.
I don't mean to interrupt, but just so we can move on, because we're not a vax event here. It's not a COVID event. COVID's over, thank God. I'm sure you're glad COVID's at least over right now.
I was very happy.
You hope there's no outbreak of anything between now and when Stratton takes over. But Travis, just an example, if you came in my house and I said, I want you to wear a mask if you're in my house, and you said no, I could probably call the Union Township Police and say, if you said you wouldn't leave, they're going to arrest you for trespass because I told you to leave. Same thing applies to a private business. It's their business. We can't have it both ways as conservatives, say that we're against liberals telling us what to do, but then we think that a business that they don't have a right in their business, and I never wore a mask, hardly ever, I wear a plan stuff, but to say in a business that, we can't, this is your private business, but I think I have the right to dictate to you what you're allowed to tell me to do or not in your business, that's antithetical to conservatism.
No, I think it'd be different than if you were inviting me to your house and you said that.
Saying it's a private thing. I want to move on. So just because he's been polite, and I don't mean to interrupt him. I don't mean to be rude.
No, okay.
It's just we're kind of becoming a vax and mask Q&A, and I think we've done that. Let's move on from that. So are there a quick couple questions because he's got to go clean some golf carts?
Yeah, that's right. I'm thinking, my ass is in trouble.
Where the business has the right to say, no, this is my business. This is what I want, so you're going to come in. So then why, on the federal level, are they saying, this is my business, but if you come in and you want me to do something that's against my belief, then they don't have a right? How come that?
That's, like, again, when we talked about earlier about separation, there's a separation between me being different than the federal government. I mean, there just is. And if for each county sheriff, we handle things legally, how it implies and is related to state and local government laws.
So that's just us grassroots coming up from the bottom and making sure that.
Okay. We have one more question.
Yeah, so my name is Philip. I've met Sheriff Lady.
Yeah.
I did 15 years of law enforcement. To shed a little light on kind of what you guys are talking about, at the end of the day, the federal government can say whatever they want to do because they don't have any power over the state. So the state, yes, has the opportunity to step in to ensure that they can protect you, but however, it is your private business. So I understand where you're saying a mask, you can take that down to where they say you have to wear socks in their business. If they say no and you got to go, that's their property. At that point in time, they can ask you to leave. It's not a matter that you didn't wear socks or a mask or you didn't have a pen in your pocket or whatever it is, they asked you to leave. Once they ask you to leave, that's where the criteria falls in, and you refuse to leave, therefore it opens up the opportunity for trespass. My question for you, Sheriff, is at what point in time or how do we go about, because I saw this in 15 years of law enforcement, the breakdown between the training in OPATA to the, I'm going to call them lily pad training agencies, villages, small towns, stuff like that, to pick up all the new recruits who don't really actually know the law, they're learning. And they come across in times where you'll have to deal with your local agencies and stuff as well with dealing with the law, and something gets done improperly. And then it ends up falling in, yes, we end up in your county jail or we end up in your situation, and those officers may have done something wrong, overseen it, or didn't do their job correctly. And it ties in your guys' sheriff's office as well as those officers. And I know there's a lot of bouncing back and forth from villages to sheriff's office. Basically, everybody's like, oh, I live in this village, this is the police I have to call, but then there's people that know, no, I can call the sheriff's office and you don't show up. Well, then that village gets mad. Don't call the sheriff, we're the police. It's per se, it's a pissing match between the concept of county and local jurisdiction. But the question at hand is I'm trying to figure out how do we get into a concept where everybody's on the same page. The training and all those officers get the same training in the county in which we're dealing with.
Well, so right now the state has also expanded what's called a collaborative agreement standards. I didn't know if you knew that, but the state has put together, it's almost like an accreditation process, and they put these standards together every year. In our county, when I talked about earlier about creating the training center, that is open, and we do in-service every year to include legal updates, firearms, self-defense, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that sheriff's department only, or is that all agencies?
I invite other agencies, particularly smaller ones who don't have the budget and the ability to do it. Some of them take us up, like Bethel, New Richmond will take us up, because they simply don't have the ability. And we offer, what I offer to them is when they participate in that to their chiefs, hey, we're willing to backfill. If you've got to send people here, we'll cover your calls, because as a county sheriff, you have complete county jurisdiction. Now, what we don't, again, for another conversation, we don't like to be cop shopped. Right. We don't like somebody to go to this place and and then to come to the sheriff and they're trying to put us against everybody. So we don't like it, though. We do have county jurisdiction. We do believe, well, and even the ORC is that we'll respond to keep the peace in the unincorporated areas. Places that have their own departments really aren't getting off scot-free. They're supposed to be utilizing what you as a community are paying for, right? So that's how we do it. I know Hamilton County Police Association and places like that, they do have standardized training that they try to incorporate all the smaller agencies, and that's something we've tried to implement here. We have Chiefs Association meetings where they come together and we say, hey, we're doing this training, we're doing that training, and we all try to pool in resources together. But in our in-service, so we may have the prosecutor's office come in and discuss recent legal changes or case law related to officers on the street. So I hope that.
But is it mandatory for those officers from those local police stations to do their training, or is it on their own?
So you'll have a standard where the state requires like a continuing ed, I think like 24 hours a year right now, and that all goes back and forth when they have money available, but they put a certain standard together. So not speaking to each one of them, so they have to get those basic standards, and then ours is above and beyond other things, the stuff that they probably wouldn't normally have the ability to do or to be able to even send their people to that kind of training because it costs money.
All right, so I want to thank you for coming, Sheriff Leahy, and I want to remind everybody to pick up the Sheriff Leahy commemorative coffee mug.
I have a lot of them. So, yeah, make them great stocking stuffers. My kids are tired of coffee mugs.
So I would like to just everybody just to really give Sheriff Leahy a round of applause and thank him for his work. And if you golf make sure to tip him good and wipe your seat off on your car.
That's the stuff you probably say for the kids.
I'd be afraid if I saw him in plain clothes that it was some setup where I was going to get something. Okay, so that was much longer than I expected, but I think good conversation. And frankly, we should have not questions right now, Sherry. Okay. So and frankly, there should be a community thank you to Sheriff Leahy. I'm sure he's getting thank yous by the sheriff's office. There should be a party thank you to Sheriff Leahy. Yeah. For the election is in November, and then in January 1, probably Chris Stratton will be the sheriff. He's running unopposed. So I
think it's January 6th.
January 6th, whatever the official date is. Unless Chris Stratton should go down on a felony between now and then, he's going to be the next sheriff. Okay, so I want to give a real quick, what we're here for. We might run a little bit late because we've spent a lot of time. We spent almost an hour with Sheriff Leahy. We started about 10 minutes late, but I thought it was very valuable. He's always such a nice guy, and think how complicated it is. So when we're asking him questions, he's got it from all angles. And I remember, I'm going to give an example. Bill used to mock me about this. I bought a yogurt shop that was going out of business in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and thought, oh, I can't possibly lose any money on this deal. And it became a disaster. I'm driving to live all the time because of the day people don't show up at work and stuff like this. But then I thought, when COVID hit, that was COVID was way after this episode. I thought, like, I'm very conservative, but the people I have to deal with is the high school girls mostly that worked in the shop, and their parents, and they're this and they're that. And so these business owners are, even if they're flaming conservatives, they got mom and dad is calling up about my daughter's upset about this or that in the shop. And so I think he was put in a very difficult position. Everybody's put in a difficult position, and hopefully it doesn't happen ever again. Okay, so I want to real quick, before we start with the panel and they'll introduce themselves and have a quick discussion, and this will give me leeway to really kind of keep trying to move us along. I just want to have the basics down here, and you guys can't see this. I don't know if you can see this, but that everybody's kind of on the same page as the basics of what we're talking about. And if I turn that, you can see it on there. Okay. Just because when we talk about, we're here theoretically under the umbrella of reforming the Clermont GOP, what does that even mean? So, here's kind of, very simplistic, but there's Republican voters. Those are party members, okay, and you can come and go. And right now, I just checked this morning on the Board of Elections site, it says there's 34,142 Republican Party members in Clermont County. It's based on what? How do you become a party member in Ohio?
Registration.
No, wrong. No. By what you vote in a primary.
Yeah.
Other states, I always get, it even says on our site, on the Board of Elections site, registered voters. We don't have registered parties. You get tagged as being a part of a party based on your voting in a primary, and like 2/3 of the people are no party, okay, 60%. But if you ask them, like your neighbor, are you Republican? Oh, I'm Republican, I vote every election. But you'll go look in the database and there'll be no party because they don't vote in the primary. Okay, so in Ohio, if you don't vote in a primary, you're considered to be an independent or no party automatically. It's automatic. 34,000, they elect a central committee that I believe is 168 precincts. Okay, one representative per precinct. Okay, and then they determine what's called an executive committee, which in Clermont County is one per township, or an executive per township plus the 2 municipalities, Loveland and Milford. Okay? And then they have a constitution that's kind of the governance of the whole thing. And there's a bunch of statutes and so forth and so on. But that's so that when we say what's the Clermont GOP, when I did a lot of consulting work, we always had this image of people in a circle, standing in a circle. And if you were standing in a circle, if we all got up and I said, everybody, we're going to stand in a big circle in this room, how about you likely stand? You're probably going to face in towards each other, okay? And that's, some organizations become inward focused, okay? But what are the odds that if I said stand in a circle, you'd all stand with your backs to each other facing out? Probably very low. But that's the organizations that move forward, because an organization that looks out keeps taking a step forward and adding other people, taking a step forward and adding another person. Inward organizations tend to die over time, or a revolutionary war or something like that comes up and changes the game because they get inward focused. So within this, we could talk about this whole process, but so you can look at it different ways, and we can look at it different ways. Republicanism in Clermont County ultimately is this, right? These are the people that they elect, and we want, ultimately, if this doesn't get bigger, then we're screwed. No matter how good this is, or how good this is, right? So that's kind of, and we'll see what we came up with as ideas on what it means. And then I just wanted to put this, is in a lot of counties, there's a thing called a Republican club or clubs, like the Women's Club, like if anybody here, like the Brown County Republican Women's Club. We tend to, in Clermont County, not really have that stuff, or not have it in any really evolved fashion. But in a lot of counties, the clubs actually run everything. There's a certain set of things that central committees need to do statutorily, and so they'll tend to only meet when they need to do those things. but the club is kind of what does like events and stuff like that all the time. It's not, it's more like fun, potluck dinners, all that kind of stuff, you know. And so we don't really have this level. We've had some of it like Bill's group, my groups, you know, we'll have groups that are conservative groups, but it's never been kind of evolved to the point of a lot of other counties, okay? Now, in the June reform event that we had, I just wanted to share these. I took like 3 charts out of there. There were 3 things from people that voted. There were like 45 people there. We voted with the keypads. How many people came to that event? Okay, so we voted with the keypads. I tended to cut it off once it hit like 40, but there were like 45 people there. Some people weren't, or slow, or not hitting it, and we got to keep moving. So I took one of the things, I went and looked through the charts this morning, and one of the things was almost everybody thought elected officials and their spouses shouldn't be in party leadership. Okay? And at least when we talked about it at that time, we were not talking about, for Mr. Cooper, township level, we were talking about partisan elected officials, like county level elected officials. Other one was that primary endorsement should be, if there's endorsements in primary, it should be not at all, that's that line, or after the filing deadline. Just as a frame of reference, party endorsement in Clermont County has always been in the primary, has always been the big thing. That's when everybody shows up for the meeting. And the people, you get to meet all the people that never came to any other meeting when it's primary endorsement day. And in Clermont County, historically, and these guys can later disagree with me, but I think they'll agree, it's always been done before the filing deadline, and the system is if you don't get endorsed, you should not run in the primary. And that's why a lot of times, and a lot of voters, if you ask them, they get the slate card, they're like, oh good, I got the slate card, so I know how to vote. Then they go and it's like, hold on a second, there's only one person on each of these, right? So it creates an illusion that there's a big team, you know, there's a big thing going on, but there's very low competition often in those. But that was things. And then public engagement, this is the last chart I pulled from that, is what did people want? These are things, what do you want? Like fun social club, door-to-door outreach, you know. But the 3 biggest things selected were candidate forums and debates, issue forums and debates, and meet the candidate nights. People screaming out, we want to be engaged, right? And they might not show up, but I remember going to a thing about building churches, and it said, you know, what happens in churches? They start an evangelism team, they have an event, nobody comes, they quit. And the point being, no, if nobody comes, you keep trying. You keep trying. And eventually, actually, and that thing is, the Lord will have people come pound through your door when you're ready. And a lot of times you're not really ready. Okay, so I just wanted to share those. Now for the roundtable, we have a distinguished panel of 3 of us. Me, I'm Chris Hicks, and then I'll let these gentlemen, Dennis Cooper and Bill Thomas, introduce themselves. And I just want to say, did you not get the memo that you were supposed to wear a Trump hat? Dennis, you want to introduce yourself?
Dennis Cooper, I'm the exec in one of the townships, Washington Township. I'm also a trustee down there. I spent 41 years in the private world, though. And I've been an elected official. Well, my first election, I talked about this the other night. Some of you have heard it, so I'm not going to be redundant with it. Was in 1979. In those days, this county was all Democrats. There wasn't one Republican in office, not one. And I had the pleasure of being mentored by 2 good men, Judge John Watson and Chairman John Bourne. And they taught me a couple things. And one of the things they taught me, you've got to interface with your people. You've also got to figure out how to count votes. You want to be a winner. I wasn't supposed to win my first 2 elections, but I did, because one thing I do believe in, and we probably might disagree on it, I believe in going door. I knock on every door. Every door. And down in the area I live in, the Felicity School District is huge, and space-wise. So that was 1979. Wasn't supposed to win that election. I did. I ran for trustee in 1984. Wasn't supposed to win that election. I did. I also, Mr. Bourne said, Dennis, and you mentioned it up there, Chris, He said, I want you to do one thing. He said, I'm going to start a Republican club and I want you to be president of it. And I did. And I was president of that club for 4 years. And Chris is somewhat right. The club back in those days did everything. It was a unique group. I'm not going to say who all was in that group, but I enjoyed it. And since then, I've ran in several offices. I've had these two gentlemen here. I've had, I think, like Sheriff Leahy says, I'm probably on their webpage too. We've had our disagreements, but I look forward to talking about how we can do a better job, especially here in Clermont County. So that's a little bit about myself.
Bill, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Bill Thomas. I was on Central Committee about 6 years, and then recently resigned because of everything going on, and started Friends of Liberty. We dissolved that about a year ago, just based on lack of attendance and people getting involved. Yeah, and then I would say I was on the inside of kind of the stuff that Chris was talking about, these endorsements. There's fractions within the Central Committee that kind of control these endorsements. So getting a name on there, it's pretty corrupt. So on the outside, as just a registered voter, you don't understand how the name got on there. You're just being a loyal Republican. You're saying, oh, the Republican Party supports these people, I'm going to vote for them. But you really don't understand the nuts and bolts of how that person got on there. If you did, you wouldn't vote for some of them. So I think that's really what we're here to talk about as well, is to understand the process of how these corrupt elected officials, how does a Jesse Kremig end up endorsed by the Republican Party but never be rescinded even after everything that's come up? No, the Republican Party has not one time come out and said, we rescind that endorsement, despite everything that came out about him. That's a problem. So it's egotistical, and it reflects poor integrity on the party, which I think Republicans historically, we were a party of integrity. We were started in opposition to slavery and injustices. And not to sound like a liberal, but reality is Republicans believe in equality, true equality, not, well, you're black, so we're going to hire you. It's about, oh, I don't care that you're black. Are you qualified for the job? You're hired. How do we get to that place and getting better to that? But we see it at all levels, people being hired, even conservatives in this state, hiring at the state level, people into positions because of their minority status. It's a problem. So I think all of these are things that we're going to talk about today.
Okay, and I didn't really introduce myself at all, but I just want to say, kind of a running joke with Bill Thomas and me, at least for me, I don't know that he reciprocates, is that, I think we've come to there's a realization, I think, in a group of people that there needs to be real change or we're going to be screwed in Clermont County. And we look forward to being part of that change. And once we can get that change accomplished, we can go back to fighting each other just like we were before. So we just have temporarily, like the Russians, I don't know who's the Russians and who's the United States.
You're the one with the Russian coat.
We're stopping, So I appreciate you guys coming. And by the way, when Bill said it always gets very frustrating because you feel like, I even feel like with my neighbors, don't they care enough? They don't care enough. And I'd rather have a group. So if you're into this, I see people that come to a lot of these. It's not about necessarily, one thing you realize too, it's not about getting a room of 100 people. It's about getting 5, 6 people that can really do something.
Yeah.
Right? And really do something and really focus on getting something done. So here's what we're going to try to do. And I'm going to try to kind of ramrod the stuff through here because we're going to have, I'm watching that clock. We don't have a lot of time. I'm going to try to target being done at, if I said it would be done completely by 12:20 or so, how many people have a big problem with that?
I'll start to every
Okay, but just so you know, I don't want to, I'd say that I want to give up front, say this is what I'm shooting for, versus people start trickling out because they don't know how long am I going to go. But I'm going to shoot for 12, that's another hour and 10 minutes from now to be done. And we're going to have to go quick. We're not going to get as deep because Sheriff Leahy, blah, 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 blah. That's how they.
I apologize.
And we're going to hold off on questions.
I just want to apologize to the group for taking the time. It's just very.
But you're taking the time now. So I'm going to ramrod us. We do not need this, okay? We need to keep moving, okay? And we want to have an active Q&A. And if you haven't figured out, Bill figured out that I'm a pain in the ass a long time ago. Dennis figures that out almost every time we have a conversation. Okay, I'm going to be and it's two things. We're going to have interaction, but I tell things when it's questions, what's the question? Not the speech. What's the question? Okay, and because I think this is a lost art in our society. Ask the question, not give the speech. Okay, and so here's what we're going to basically try to do, and I put it up here, is each of us is going to try to identify top 2 to 3 items that we think need reform in the Clermont GOP. I wrote mine down already. I don't know if you guys did your homework before, but I wrote mine down. I actually have 4, so I'm hoping one of them pick one of mine so that it'll still get on the board. Okay? And we're 3 items about 2 to 3 items for needing reform in the Clermont GOP. Some of that may be confusing if you've never been involved. I just gave you the 30,000 foot view of what we're even talking about. We'll have a quick discussion of each topic with audience Q&A on it. And then we'll try to focus. I want us to try to focus on specific changes, like what would we do? What would be the action? Okay, not just what's the problem. Okay, and then the coins that you have, these poker chips, I used to host a wicked poker game in the illegal pub in my basement. That's a joke. If you're an insider, you know the joke, all the things. But these are, what I want to do at the end is we're going to have, and I'll probably have my wife go around on each one just to speed it up with the little bucket that's back there, BJ. Or we can use Leahy coffee cups. We can put numbers on them. Okay, and remind me after we're done, I apologize for this, but it's funny, we'll take the rest of that box to Goodwill. But you'll be asked to say, of the things that we talked about, if we get where we want to be, whatever you think is the best idea, you put the 10,000 on, second best idea, 5,000, third best idea, 1,000. So there'll be a way to prioritize, at least get some feedback on priorities, okay? So real quick, before we do this, and quickly for you gentlemen, is I put up this chart. What is the status now of the Clermont GOP and the future of conservative republicanism in Clermont County, and what's the outlook for the future? So if you came here and said, like, I think it's unbelievable, it's like, you could walk away with very different impressions. So I think it's important that you kind of know where we're coming from, each of us is coming from, of kind of at the surface, 30 seconds or less, how would you quickly describe what you think is the current status of the Clermont GOP and the outlook for the future? Bill, why don't you go first?
I have one word: pathetic. I can do it in one word.
Okay, and I'll take it. Dennis.
As far as I'm concerned, I think the Trump team that we've assembled is doing great. And that's the only part I'm going to talk about.
Well, and that's not technically the Clermont GOP, right?
He's just trying to be nice.
I'm just being positive. That is the best thing we got going for us right now.
And I would agree with, what was your word, Bill?
Pathetic.
I would go with Bill's word, pathetic. So mark the time, we agreed on another thing, the word pathetic, okay? So that's where we're coming from. We invited several people that could have sat here and said the opposite, but they won't come here. And by the way, that's one of the pathetic problems. Unlike Sheriff Leahy, who we just asked yesterday, and comes, the people that are in leadership in the Clermont GOP refuse to submit themselves to this. He's in leadership because you're in leadership because you're the executive committee.
Yes.
And he used to be the central committee chair. I don't know if you said that.
I did not.
Yeah, so he's the prior central committee chair in the Clermont GOP. All right, so let's start with identifying our top 2 to 3 items. Have you guys done your homework and made a list, or you're going to?
I don't need a list.
I don't.
Okay, so I don't want to, and let's not go crazy because we're not going to. By the way, we're not going to solve world peace here. We're going to move forward. Okay, and because we're only going to have so much time, we can only talk about so much. But if we can get 1 or 2 good things where you guys think that's a good thing, we should do it. So who wants to start with one of their ideas?
I think one of the problems is also one of the solutions. It's outreach. We don't do enough outreach to the voters, and we need to do more of it. One of the suggestions that I had given Jeff Corcoran early on was we need quarterly meetings as central committee members and the public where the people can come and discuss, because at a central committee meeting, you are not allowed to come talk. You're prohibited from talking to the people that you elect.
So what I want to do, and I'm stepping on Bill here, is I just want to capture the list to start with, and then we'll talk about each one. So voter outreach, okay? Dennis, you got one.
Mine is, and I'm not saying it's the panacea, but, you know, we have a constitution. We need to follow.
I knew he was going to say this. That's why I'm laughing.
And within that constitution, we have something called Robert's Rule. Can you imagine 168 people trying to figure out what's in this book? I like to use props. That's in our constitution. There it is.
So, okay, follow the constitution. Now, I'm going to put one of mine. I'm going to put, and we'll see who is the most controversial ones. I'm going to put the and primary endorsement. And I'll put and, just for sake of these guys here, I'll put and or retool. You know, primary endorsement. Okay, Bill, you have another one.
So retooling the primary endorsement is one of mine.
Okay, so we'll put that together. Okay.
Retooling also is one of mine on the primary endorsement.
Okay, so we'll go. So I'm typically the person that has, for my entire time associated with the organization, been the no primary endorsement guy. And you've had the people that never change anything about primary endorsement. And there is, like, I think more and more people that think it needs to get retooled, okay, in that process, which is in the middle, kind of like, you know, and so I'm good with trying to solve the issue. So I'll process out, I'll say retool, okay, primary endorsement. Okay, do either of you have another one you want to add?
And I don't know how, the problem, I believe, are the people serving on Central Committee, because a large portion of Central Committee, they don't come to the meetings. They're there to be there for the endorsement. So I think the quality of committee members is a problem. And I thought we had a method of fixing that through Friends of Liberty, but obviously it failed. So I don't have a way of fixing it because I've tried.
So I put Central Committee member quality.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can lumber all that stuff together. I'm going to see if I have another one here that hasn't been. I had one that was like this. Okay, so I had one that was like that. I'm going to put engage in school boards.
Amen.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, how I feel about that.
Okay. You guys had any other?
I think that's good. A good list for today.
I have, how many of mine? I have one more.
It's about 3 hours of discussion.
And then we'll have 6. Okay. I'm going to put annual assessment. And we can talk, you probably know what I'm talking about when I say that, but that we would annually be assessing our elected officials, not in a way to just kill them, but to tell them, kind of like your job review. How many people are here for job review? Here's what you're doing good, here's what you're doing not so good, here's what you could do to improve.
Chris, I got a quick one. 2-year term limits for Central Committee members. I think that needs. I think we need to be at 2 years. The 4 years is just, that's creating part of the problem. Which we did vote on that at one point, and it got voted down to change it.
Okay, anything else that you guys want to add? So we have 7 items. I didn't really plan this out for what happens now.
They should stick on the wall, right?
So I don't know. They're probably not going to stick on this.
Put them on the cabinets.
So we're going to stick it on the cabinet. Yeah. Then everybody will be able to see it. And then let's not forget. Let's put some LEAHY coffee mugs in the cabinet after.
Stock them up.
Or I told him when he came in, I'm like, I got a P-Touch machine at home. I can make Stratton labels and stick them over over what you have. Okay, so what I want to do is, we can take notes, and I'm recording this, so we'll have like that. But so we've identified a list of things, and what I want to do is just have a discussion of each between the 3 of us, and then we can have some questions. But I'm already at like about 20 after, so we about have an hour left for the whole thing, and we got to be done, okay? So is there one up there that one of you would like to start with?
I know you're going to follow the Constitution. I'll do voter outreach.
We want to start with that one, the first one we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So voter outreach is critical. One of the reasons that I had started Friends of Liberty was to reach out to people that didn't know anything about politics. It was to get people engaged. And, you know, I often say Friends of Liberty failed, but it really did. We may have split up, but the separate organizations like Sherry was over mandates. They still meet. They still do productive things. The Election Integrity Committee, they still meet and do things. So even though the core organization failed, it's split up and people are still doing work, which is really, I really don't care about the organization. I care about the effort as all it was. The same principle for this is getting people engaged in these types of meetings, educating them how to be on central committee and be a committee member, and understanding, hey, when you come to central committee, don't get swamped into all this stuff, which I brought through Friends of Liberty, a lot of people that quite frankly got swamped into the Chris Hicks Haters Club, which I was the president for the longest time. So I realized that that is not productive to fixing the issues. I could sit and fight with him about 1,000 things today, but it's not going to fix the problem. The problem is more important than my fight with him. How do you get, we have just under 40,000 voters in this county, in the 30,000 range.
No, we have way more than that. We have 34,000 that vote in the primary.
Republican.
Yeah.
Republican, registered Republican voters. I don't care about the Democrat voters because some of the Democrats are not going to change their mind. What I do care about is those people that are in the center that they don't understand. They don't want to be associated with the Republican Party. I talk to conservatives all the time. They're like, I don't want to be a registered Republican because I don't want to be a part of that. We have to fix that. And you fix it by getting the word out that we're wanting to fix it. So voter outreach is important.
So I'm going to interrupt you just for a second because I did a little math on the clock. And if we stay on time, we got to spend a little bit less than 10 minutes per topic.
Yeah.
And so I think when we look at these topics, we could say, we might, as the three of us, be able to say what's broken, and then what should happen. Okay, what's broken about the Clermont GOP? Because Friends of Liberty or Western Clermont County Republican Club, these are things that are not officially, you know, these are people starting stuff separately because there's a void that nobody's doing anything.
But I think you collectively get together, and I'm not going to talk on follow the Constitution because I'll let Cooper handle it, so you'll save time on that one. I do believe that as a central committee, we have to reach out and communicate with the voters. People don't know, like the transparency is terrible. Everything, I keep hearing from friends of mine that are on Central Committee, we need to do this internally. What's talked about in the barracks stays in the barracks. BS, no, I disagree with that. I think that at this point, things need to be out. Every Republican voter needs to know what's going on with the party and be engaged in trying to help fix it.
Can I make a comment? I think that, to me, the word here should be engagement.
Yeah, engagement, right.
Because there's people that would think that handing somebody a slate card at the polling location is voter outreach, okay? Handing them something at their door or leaving a bag is voter outreach. And that's very one way, very, we tell you what to do. And there's literally people think that's the way it should work. We hand you a card, you vote as told.
I have dozens of people.
We don't need to hear from you.
Every election, people call me, a ton of people call me, how am I voting? No kidding. How should I vote in this election? You need to educate yourself on every person on the ballot. And it is the job of the Republican Party to make sure that that is accessible to every voter.
So if I put down here, Bill, something like a candidate guide, okay, where every candidate in the primary is in the guide, whether they're endorsed or not. Yeah. That's what a lot of counties do. And they'll have like a mark next to the person that's endorsed. Like Scioto County's like that. Every candidate's part of the guide and the primary. The one who's endorsed by the Central Committee is marked with a check mark, this is the endorsed one, but the voters can get educated on all the candidates running the primary.
I think that we should have, and the candidate guide should have a pros and cons list that's discussed in the Central Committee, and every member we should have the top 3 pros and the top 3 cons that are discussed and voted on the Central Committee. Imagine if we, as a Central Committee, as a whole, voted on the pros and cons of each candidate that's going to run in the primary.
I think before we get there is just the concept of there will be a candidate guide, because I've run in primaries. The cons are me or being I'm a child molester, on this, on that, right? So there'd be things in there that were completely fabricated, okay?
Yeah.
So, but step one is even having the DNA that there should be a candidate guide to get to then the next discussion of what's in the candidate guide. Right now, there's nothing, there's not even on a website. Here's all the candidates running in the primary, for example.
Yeah.
But in the other things,
update the website.
We had things like meet the candidate nights.
Right. An informative website and page would be great for voter outreach. Our current GOP pages.
So isn't it ironic for the entire primary cycle leading up to this election, there's not one party-sponsored meet the candidate night? Because I think, I'm going to be sarcastic here, but I think I'm true. You don't need to meet the candidates. You just vote the way you're supposed to.
Well,
no, you're told to.
Yeah.
Well, but to understand why, just so everybody understands why they don't do this, is the person leading the Central Committee does not believe it's in the purview of the organization to do these things. He says, those are club activities. Those are club activities. That's what he believes. Sure, a club can enhance that, but as a Central Committee, electing quality people into office is the primary goal. You get there by doing this kind of stuff.
All right, Dennis, what do you have to add on this topic?
On this topic?
Yeah.
Not a whole, my whole thing revolves around the Constitution, Chris.
Okay, your point.
And what, you're talking about the Central Committee. Mm-hmm. What they need to understand is the Assembly, the Central Committee, the people, you have control of that. If you're on the Central Committee, you control it. As chair, I chaired that, and they wouldn't even let me speak most of the time. It's altogether different now. But if you're the chair, all you do is conduct. You're like the maestro.
Let's cover this when we talk about the Constitution, because this is just
the Constitution. They don't follow it.
Okay, but let's finish this topic of voter outreach and engagement, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Anything else you want to add? Any questions, quick questions or comments? Travis, your hand went up.
Just talk to your neighbor. Just talk to people next door to you. You know, as a Republican, we just need to talk to our immediate neighbors and then go from there.
I think, but I don't think that's the party's voter engagement strategy. The voter engagement is like we have candidate forums, we have this, we have that. This idea like, well, just people should talk to each other. That's typically what people say that don't want there to be real voter engagement. Just everybody go talk to your neighbor. Okay, over.
The biggest problem to hit all of that is lack of education. Because at the end of the day, we can all do this. This new generation doesn't give a rat's ass.
Well, can I also bring up? But I want to make a point. When do we ever engage have a forum for young people to ask them what they care about?
Yeah, there's no education.
The first part of the discussion is, what do you think is important to the citizens? Not, hey, sit down and shut up, we're going to tell you what's important. And then we don't understand why you don't follow us.
What are you talking about, Chris? There's a Young Republicans Club in this country.
So, yes. All right, I saw another hand.
I think we go back to the leadership of the Central Committee. I think it starts there.
Well, that's not, we're going to talk about that.
Well, I understand, but the voter outreach comes from the Central Committee. If we don't have guidance for the voter outreach, there is nothing. You know, like he's saying, I'm a pain in the ass, you know. I know you do.
If this becomes a top thing, how we do it is the next question. Not right now saying, maybe it's what we need to have a club. You know, that could go under here. We need to have a club.
Well, but we have those things. They don't work. Because our leadership that we have doesn't allow it to work.
They work in every other county.
Well, but it doesn't work here because of our leadership.
Well, but that's how we're going to solve for these things, ultimately. How do we solve for them is what's important, and then how do you solve? Like if we were in the military, what objectives we have, and then how we're going to take those objectives are two different things.
I think one of the things, real quick, I want to add is, I think opening it up, meet the candidate, but we need to hear from the community. So we need to be able to open it up to hear from the voter base. So like I said, quarterly meetings at the Holiday Inn, allowing people to come speak to the Central Committee.
Just that, you know, a lot of people don't vote. Don't you think most people don't actually vote on deep principle things? They vote on, you know, the people that vote for Kamala Harris will vote because they hate Trump and they think, you know, whatever. It's not deep principle things. And sometimes you can take people and have them and just have a listening session where you listen to them and never say anything. And they might vote for you more just because you took the time to listen to them.
Right.
You know, so I'm going to put this here, and this is going to be number one. We don't have to do them in order, but let's follow the Constitution because I feel like that's going to be a thing. So Dennis, why don't you talk about your issues with what do you think the problem is right now?
Well, I think there's a couple things. The Central Committee members need to be educated that we do have a Constitution. I don't, of 168 or 155 or whatever we got now, probably there might be 30% of them that know we even got a Constitution, and of that 30%, probably maybe 10% has read it. I've got it right here. We've got a Constitution, folks. There it is.
It's just not compliant.
Let me say, it needs to be, and the only way you can change this, you can't have somebody stand up and say, we're going to suspend the Constitution. It can't happen. It doesn't work that way. The only way you can change this is through amendment. And guess what? In this Constitution, we tell folks how you can amend this thing. And it needs to be tweaked. We need to get in compliance with some ORC items. Let me premise this. The ORC, the Ohio Revised Code, supersedes this. If there's something in the ORC that is not compliant with this, then we need to get in compliance with it. And we aren't quite there. So you got your Constitution, and then in this Constitution it says we follow Robert's rules. Well, guess what? If we've got it in the Constitution and it's in this book is null and void. We follow our Constitution. And I don't know how many times we've said and we listen, we're going to suspend. We did it at our endorsement meeting. We did it at our endorsement. I stood up and said you can't suspend endorsing someone that night, and they did.
Making the rules as we go.
Can I simplify too? Because I think you have followed the Constitution. And I put fixed meetings, because the reality is we have meetings that ignore the Constitution, ignore Robert's rules, and is basically at the whim of whoever that says, that we think that we can suspend the Constitution. Whether or not the Constitution's right, wrong, needs changed or not, the current mentality is it basically doesn't matter. You can just do whatever you want. Last time I checked, that's what we think that liberals do.
May I follow up? And I'm going to be very quick. So let's go back to the July meeting. And if you remember in that July meeting, it was moved from a Wednesday night to a Thursday night. You recall that happening? So one committee member sent out an email. I've got the email right here, and I'm going to read what she said. She made the statement that I don't recall us changing the meeting night. So we had one of the officers say the answer to your question is in Article 2, Section 2, Paragraph A that states the method of scheduling regular meetings shall be determined by voted upon by the majority of those present at the Republican Central Meeting. If July 18th meeting date was adopted by a majority vote of those present, which is different from a majority vote of those present. So they moved it to July 18th. There was never a vote taken. There was never a motion made.
Discussion.
So the chairman is not there. The vice chairman comes in and runs this meeting, and as far as I'm concerned, it was a legal meeting. My first meeting I ever had, they told me it was illegal. When I became chair, and Mr. Hicks, I don't know if you were there, but they said it's an illegal meeting because the people weren't notified about that meeting. So I had to spend all summer running an illegal meeting. But that happened.
So if I simplify this, if I boil this down, I think your key, if I were looking at your point, Dennis, if we can't even have Central Committee meetings that follow the Constitution, follow Robert's rules, are organized and care about that, it doesn't matter if we try to do all this other stuff. So, and I'm going to use an example. I would do a lot of IT stuff with like visioning and strategy, and people would say, we need a new system to do this, we need a new system to do this, we need a new system to this, and then finally, and everybody go, oh yeah, those are the things, that's where we're going to invest our tokens. And then somebody would say like, yeah, but our storage infrastructure is hosed up and we can't do any of those things. So Chris, and then all of a sudden it becomes, we can't do all this stuff unless we fix this basic thing. This basic thing, it can't be effed up. If it's effed up, we can't move forward.
Chris, may I go, because if you look up there, I want to look at your You got the Central Committee member quality, and then you got another one up there on annual. But the Central Committee members need to be educated on the fact that they control the meeting.
Dennis, we've had circle meeting after circle meeting educating them, and they walk away, they don't understand it.
But let's remember that there was a thing, or there is a thing called the circle, which is a private group of members that doesn't include all the members that plot out how they're going to do the meetings before the meetings. So we can both admit that I was never friends with anybody. I've always been the outcast and the black sheep. But I think you could probably say at this point, a lot of the behaviors of the people that would say they're trying to fix something actually are creating some of the division.
But even the 40 people that would come to those meetings would be, they weren't told how to vote. They were really educated on how to properly make motions and all that. And they would leave that meeting, Luis has been in those meetings with me, they would go to the next meeting completely still not know how to make a proper motion. So you tried educating.
Quick question, then I want to move on to the next topic.
What's the consequence? There's no consequence.
None.
Not follow the Constitution.
None.
And there's no consequence.
You can't even remove a committee member.
None.
There's no way to remove a member once they're voted in.
So you can't fix it.
No.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
You can suspend.
So, but go ahead. Yes.
You can't even talk at a meeting.
Yeah, there is, Bill.
I believe that there's a cancer or cancers within the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
Central Committee.
It's like Luisa said, leadership.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's go. Let's get the comment back here. I don't mean to be rude. I'm going to be very rude for the rest of the meeting, but I'm not meaning to be. I'm just watching this clock. There's a clock right there. Go ahead, sir.
The big problem comes all the way from the top. At the end of the day, the lack of information that people understand, 90% of the people that live inside the United States never read the actual national constitution or their constitution, have no clue what even Robert's rule is. The sad part about it is motorcycle affiliations across the country use Robert's rule and know it better than the basic citizen.
Okay.
So with that being said, this is my question, or not my question, my comment. Because we don't know that, they're using our ignorance against us. That's why we're losing. Nobody knows.
I know. Okay, I get it. I just want to move on to the next topic, but I do want to make one comment from me. Is I don't think that the issue is ultimately that they don't know it. I don't think the issue ultimately is that they haven't had education. I think the ultimate issue is a character issue. Because the character issue, Robert's Rules is not that hard. At Buckeye Boys State, in an hour, the boys know how to do the whole Robert's Rules enough to be dangerous, okay? The point is that you have people that are very selective. So emotion, as we know, and you hit on one thing, Dennis, but here's the thing we've all seen, is emotion. Somebody will make a motion and just be told you're not allowed to make a motion.
Well, you
okay?
told me.
Because you're not one of the cool kids. The cool kids, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep moving on, okay? The cool kids are allowed to make the motions. The non-cool kids, you make a motion, it ain't going to happen, right?
No,
it's going to be out of order, not allowed, this. And that is a character issue. It's not that the person doesn't know that Robert's Rules allows any member to make a motion, as you know, okay? It's that they don't care because they have bad character. So ultimately, character is, I think, one of the big things. Is that people have to want to believe this, and they have to respect that if Louisa or I or Bill have a different opinion, you can be the chair and not like our opinions, but you still realize we have an equal right to make a motion and frankly, Robert's Rules is there mostly to protect the minority from getting run over by the majority all the time. Bill, do you have a comment?
Well, I do, because I have had countless private calls. I've had you on them with Byron, Kidwell, Corcoran, and I will put Corcoran on a call, spend an hour, 2 hours. We'll look over the Constitution. I'll explain to him what it means. He'll argue. I'll bring Byron in to explain it to him. And then end result is, well, we're going to do it this way. That is a problem because you have a dictator running the Central Committee. And nobody wants to hear it. And we're going to tie into number 4, because let's go to number 4 next. Because
I just read 3, so hold on.
Right, write 4 down, because I think this slides into 4. The problem, and I'm going to get into 4 here, is we put a lot of people on Central Committee through Friends of Liberty. A lot of people came to become a part of it. And these are people that I felt were really good people. I worked with them. I thought they were great. Just John Rapking. I was sitting at La Rosa's, called Greg Simpson. Hey, I got a guy from Miami. I'm going to bring him on. It's the first time I really ever met John. And they thought I was trying to bring my own people in. And they tried to block it. But John, he wasn't tied into any groups. Greg Simpson and Rick Combs tried to block him because they wanted to get to him and feel him out to see if he was going to be part of their club or their group. And if they weren't, they were going to try to block him. Same thing happened to Bill Muse when I helped Bill to get on. So the quality of people are controlled by these execs, because if you don't get on, I used to think Chris was this guy. I fought with Chris all the time. I'm like, well, don't go through Chris to get on central committees, what I told Mike Logue originally. I said, you need to here's a precinct open, here's the paperwork, go to the central committee, don't go through him because he's putting his own people on. I honestly thought that's what Chris was doing at the time. It actually does happen with the Simpsons and all of them out there. So the reason there's a quality problem is, Jeff Corcoran didn't become leader of the Central Committee because the masses voted for him. He became leader of the Central Committee because Linda Fraley called James Kidwell and I and said, this is who's going to be this. David Carter's going to be the party chair, and we're all going to back him. And we put a ton of people on Union Township through Linda Fraley, and they were write-in votes, and they voted him out, and they voted for the people that Linda said. They don't come to every meeting. They go when Linda says, hey, we're voting on this tonight, show up, and they come. So these fractions are built, and they're put together, and they're wrong, and it's got to stop, and that's why there's the quality problem.
So Dennis, you want to comment on this before I say anything?
On what he just said?
Yeah, on the quality of members of the Central Committee.
I hear what you're saying. I think there's some decent people on there. We have decent. We have decent people on the. I think it's a matter of them not understanding the authority that they have as an assembly. And and quite frankly, if you stand up to make a motion, if the chair recognizes you, and you stand up to make a motion, he can't set you down.
He does, Dennis.
Wait a minute. You have the floor. It is your floor. It isn't his.
But Dennis, he does. I know what you're saying.
You say you continue to make your motion, and after a third time of him trying to set you down, you can remove him as chair. It's in the book. Guys, it's in this book. You can remove him.
It goes back to what this gentleman said. There's no recourses when he doesn't follow.
Just for sake of us moving along here, I'm watching this clock. Okay, so you get the key points. At least we can get the key points of the issues. Again, I think that this is, you hit on a couple things, Bill. There's people on the committee. If you actually ask people on the committee, and you said, everybody take out a piece of paper and write down the purpose of the Central Committee, okay? What do you think? I think a big number of people would say endorsements. Okay?
Yeah.
Very few people. I might be the only person that writes down deliver quality government to the citizens.
Yep.
Okay? So what happens is it's all factions, and you hit on this, the Linda Fraley faction. Frankly, whatever you do, if you get, there's a factions of elected officials that control blocks of votes, and it really doesn't even matter. You don't even have to have the meeting because they're going to tell their people how to vote, and they're going to vote that way. And it's not going to be about what's best for the citizens, what's best for conservatism, what's best for the Republican Party. It's going to be factional. And so that factionalism, these quality issues are factionalism, people not voting, not letting themselves be a slave. When you bring people in, that what you can, I think what you've said is, you bring people in and you think they're going to be one way and they turn out to be a different way, and so, and the funny part about it for Bill, for all this, I don't know if he appreciates this now, but I am not a people person. That's one thing people don't seem to understand. I'm not a people person. Okay, they all think I don't, nobody likes me, but they can't get I'm not a people person. I never tried to bring people onto our committee in Union Township. It's not the way I operate. I'm not a people person, so I don't have a little.
Chris, I want to touch on this real quick. Yes. I think part of what has created the quality problem is it's the same thing as what we're dealing with Trump right now. The hate for Trump is a manufactured hate. It really is. There's things that Trump says, sometimes I'm like, I just bang my head on the table. But the reality is what Trump does over the job is he does a great job. Everybody in here knows how I feel about Chris. I think it's, if you read Change Clermont, you can figure that out. But he when he does things, he does do good work. That's why I couldn't get him removed from Union Township a couple times I tried, is because it came down to, yes, Chris is an a-hole, and I don't like Chris, but he runs the meetings great. His cause is good. So that's why I could never get across the board of removing him. The problem with what's going on here is you've got somebody that he takes his orders from someone else, and we, as a central committee, we're intimidated. Louisa gets to the point where she will not stand up to try to make a motion because she's intimidated. We have stood up and said, point of order, point of order, point of order.
I'm not intimidated. I'm not allowed to. You completely disregard me when my hand is up in the air.
But Chris, on that thing we need to write, one of the things that we got to figure out is how to have repercussions for what we've done, because what has happened now is there's been a manufactured hate for Chris. Beyond the hate that I have ever had for Chris at any given time, the current hate for Chris is you could sit here and say, Jeff Corcoran, I believe, could honestly pull the trigger and shoot somebody and they wouldn't remove him from Central Committee. Because all I hear from these people that I helped get on was, but he suspended Hicks. No one else has been able to do that. He suspended Chris. He's doing something about Chris. I don't care about Greg Simpson lying. I don't care about Kremig sleeping with somebody in a park. Jeff Corcoran hates Chris Hicks, so I'm going to support Jeff Corcoran. That is a reality of what is happening in the Central Committee now.
So I want to move us.
Absolutely, Bill.
I want to move on, but I think that this whole I have never made a motion to suspend people. People tell me, can people be suspended? My answer is no. Okay, even though I'm suspended, because what can happen is that cycle of they do it, we do it. What we got to do is repudiate it and take away the power from the structure the way it is that can do that stuff. The thing that's scary, Dennis, is you point to the Roberts rules. Probably you can remove the chair if they do it 3 times or what have you, but it's probably a vote called for.
No, it is not.
Okay, well then you know what you're doing next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, one comment.
Chris,
We'll go to number 6 and number 7, annual assessment in 2-year terms.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Annual assessment.
So I've done a lot of consulting work, and there's always, you're a wonderful person. I don't even know you to say, doesn't everything all go together? Okay, so this is about assessing the elected officials.
Have some repercussions.
That's fact. But some of the elected officials aren't Central Committee members.
That should be a full assessment.
So there's a difference between, so let's cover a topic before we determine what goes together. Okay, and we're going to prioritize. Yes, sir.
Can a lawsuit dissolve leadership?
No.
But that's
Okay, all right, so let's cover primary endorsement retooling. Okay, primary endorsement retooling. Dennis, let's say if each of us say, what retooling of primary endorsement would you support?
I would support not having the endorsement meeting until after all the, even almost down to the write-ins are turned in. Okay. And I don't know how long that would, and we got plenty of time to do that.
And what is the deadline for that?
Well, it varies. Like the presidential election fell back into, what was it, 30 days before we had March. You had to have, this year was the primary deadline for filing. And then next year it'll be, I think they'll go to May, or 26th they go to May for the filing deadline. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's March. It's different in presidential years because they moved the primary earlier because there used to be a time when it mattered because it was like the states, like the Super Tuesday type thing and stuff like that. So it's,
they deviate
on presidential election years.
But Chris, can you explain for different candidates for different positions?
They're all the same.
They're not all the same because like your school board is different.
That's an anomaly.
Yeah, right now, because we have school board as a topic. Right now, the Central Committee has nothing to do with school boards. So just as you aware, there are county level of things, county level and legislative delegation, like the auditor, the treasurer, the prosecutor, county level and legislative delegation, state rep, federal rep, state senator. That's mostly, and then judges come into place. I'll say judges. That's mostly what people would think of as being endorsement. You know, that there's things about school board, stuff like that. But remember, when you get to that, it's local. It's not the whole county, okay? So most of the stuff that the Central Committee is dealing with at that level, and probably what I would say we should umbrella here, is when it's doing endorsements that affect either the whole county or vast portions, like the 2 legislative districts. And that's historical what that is. There is a difference, just I don't mean to ramrod all this information, but there are, unless mostly we're talking about primary endorsement here, there are some races that don't have primaries, like municipal clerk of courts and municipal judges. But for sake of discussion here, the big endorsement thing, there's these variations, but we're not going to get to them in the next, but is generally speaking when there's a primary and it's county level or legislative delegation things. And historically, there's a difference because in the primary filing deadline, it becomes important because when you do the endorsement prior to the filing deadline, you get people that, and I've done this, you just sign up to be in the endorsement. Hey, what the hell, if I get endorsed, I can go get the petitions done. Versus the person consciously did the work to be a registered candidate by filing, and now they're considering endorsement. So that's why you get, like when Prosecutor Mark DeCalby first ran, there were 2 other people, Darren Miller and Aaron Moss, running against him, and as soon as they weren't endorsed, and he was endorsed, neither of them filed. So there was never a competition. So I heard after the filing deadline, we could stop right there because that's the most simple thing, is that endorsement would change to be after the filing deadline, and when that is the next discussion, Dennis, when you said how far after.
Yeah, that would be in 26 will be your next, and I think that would be the filing deadline's in May. Now, don't hold me to that. I think it's May in 26.
Well, the primary would be in May.
Primary's in May, yeah. So the filing deadline is what, 90 days?
Yeah, something like that.
So you'd back that up and answer your question be in February or?
The key, but I'm just going to say the key thing is
it's 90 days.
It's after the filing deadline.
Or 75, it's 75 or 90.
So they're going to be on the ballot. You can still pull your petitions for like 30 days after you file them and drop out. But okay, Bill, you want to add something on this one?
Yeah, I think the way we endorse as a committee is completely a mess. I don't, endorsing candidates is not a statutory right of a central committee member. So one of the things everybody needs to understand, there's 2 sides of the central committee member. Chris is suspended, but he's not suspended from a statutory obligation. So let's say Commissioner Painter resigns. The voted members, these are the people who live in their precincts, they are responsible for putting in a new commissioner until the next election. So they have a lot of power in that statutory obligation. They can literally put somebody in an elected position. Chris has the right they cannot suspend that right. He still has the right to go to the meeting and vote on that. What they've ruled now is that they can shut him down in the meetings, they can silence him, he can't participate in endorsement meetings. So I think what happens is we as a central committee, when we go to endorsement, if you haven't come to a certain amount of meetings, I kept hearing, well, you can't restrict somebody's ability to vote in an endorsement meeting. Why? It's not their statutory obligation. So I'm going to add down,
that's what I wrote here, is a criteria to participate in the endorsement
meeting. Like show up to more than one meeting a year. By the way,
that alone would screw things up because then your team players on somebody's feet they don't come to regular meetings, but they show up on endorsement day and they've been told how to vote. And if they were ineligible to vote because they haven't come to at least 50% of the meetings or something, then you would have an impact. So, okay, I want to keep us moving here. Were there any audience questions or comments about this one? So the next one is the engage in, well, which one do you guys want to do next? I'll let you pick.
I think we could get through engage in school boards maybe in 5 minutes.
Okay, so engage in school boards is, so right now, just as a background, the Central Committee and really nothing engages in school board elections. And the leadership, to my face, the Greg Simpson era, told me, why would we get engaged in school board elections? That's only going to be controversial. And it's then, you know, for me, and I think, Bill, you feel the same way probably, is school board's probably the most important role in our county because they involve the formation of youth going forward. And you have an unbelievable number of closet rhinos, Democrats that say they're Republicans on school boards, okay? And nobody even knows about it. And there's like, there's 11 school districts in Clermont County, I believe. So it's super broken up. There's no news media. You never know what's going on. But the committee, it's nonpartisan races, so there's not a primary. So you'd have to figure out, and even things like, even the pathetic, you know, when like the League of Women Voters would do candidate forums and stuff like that, they might have been pathetic, but there was something. Now there's basically nothing usually on a lot of these things. So a lot of people have talked about the need to get involved in school board races. I don't know that we're going to solve how to get involved, but Bill's done probably the most of anybody here in terms of trying to get involved in school board races. So what do you have to say?
So one of the things that hurt us in the last election, so Paul up here ran for school board in Milford. We had two good candidates that were very conservative, and we got our teeth kicked in because the Democrats raised a lot of money against us, and they had a huge, massive support. Just so you guys are aware, the Democrats that beat us in this school board election are the Democrats that have filled the Central Committee in the DNC down in Clermont County. And they're the same Democrats that took it from a 34-member committee to over an 80-person committee currently. They're also the same Democrats that got rid of Ray Lemke and put Patty Lawrence in as their chair, which Ray Lemke, if you guys know anything, they've sat quietly. So the Democrats use school boards as a method to infiltrate this county. That's what they're doing. They're infiltrating our county through the school board elections. And we got our teeth kicked in because the Republican Party did squat to help. They didn't help us at all. We tried to engage people. We had members on the Central Committee, a handful that did help. But as a whole, the Central Committee did not get behind the school board candidates. And it showed. But the Democrat Central Committee 100% got behind them and rallied, and it shows. So school board elections, if you guys want to have the longest lasting impact, these kids are graduating hating conservatives. They are taught to hate conservatives. They're groomed. They're taught. Paul was a teacher. He can tell you all about it. It's through the readings. It's through the literature arts. So how we get this done is we've got to get our school board under control. Milford, there's no hope. The current school board, the other two conservative candidates resigned. You now have, I know you have three crazy left-wing liberals. We're not talking moderates. We're talking loons, all right? Then we've got two that, one, they're just placeholders. They're going to go along with the other three. So to turn that school board around is going to take a massive effort. If the Central Committee and the Republican Party doesn't get involved, Milford's no hope. And we're going to start losing West Clermont and other, I think we've already, West Clermont's.
So just for time here, this is an issue that is not going to get solved overnight, but right now in the Central Committee, there's not even the permission to have the discussion.
Yeah.
It might happen in back rooms. By the way, a lot of the discussions, and you've probably seen this, you guys probably seen this, you got to be careful about people that talk to you about what they want to get done one-on-one, because they might be telling you one thing, and me one thing, and nothing happens. And we have never had just the step of having the discussion and figuring out how to have the discussion. Right now, I don't think on Central Committee, if you tried to have this discussion, it'd be like chaos because a lot of the people don't want to have the discussion.
Do you know why people don't want to discuss this in Central Committee? Because we have too many elected officials on the Central Committee that don't want that discussion. The elected officials on the Central Committee, several of them are trustees. We have two of the out of the three Miami Township trustees they're Central Committee members. You never see them at meetings because they only come when there's an endorsement vote. Mark and Mary come when there's an endorsement. I don't think I've seen Mark at any other meeting of an endorsement vote.
No.
So what you typically have is they don't want to rock the boat in Miami Township. They start messing with the schools, then they have a masses come down and outs them. So they play nice in their sandbox, and the liberals in the school district will leave them alone. It's true. Nobody understands that, but we got to get the elected officials off Central Committee. If you have elected officials on Central Committee, they have ulterior motives because they want to sustain their elected position. I think that's a huge problem.
So the school board one is just something that's, I want to add just one thing to that, is they don't typically, like let's say you're a county commissioner, and I'm not saying this is all bad, I'm just making a factual statement. You don't necessarily want to get yourself in a shitstorm that could affect politicians do not take risks, right? That's why, you go listen right now. So I read this like Joe Rogan and stuff like this. The people that say the most interesting stuff, for a lot of times, are like comedians and stuff now that have become pundits because they don't care. Politicians are always afraid to get involved in something because it could only hurt them, versus help them. So you're not going to get the county commissioners probably, hey, show up with us to picket at a school.
Well,
it ain't gonna happen.
Like when you ran for, I won't get into names, but when you ran and you were trying to do your forums, a lot of the elected officials would not come to your debates because they said, I don't need to come. I'm the endorsed candidate. Right. I don't need to come to the debate. All that's going to do is open up a box.
That was actually kind of the policy, is if you're endorsed, don't participate in any forums.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, can I make a comment real quick?
Yes.
I spoke to some elected officials that were invited today and they won't come because you recalled.
Well, that's another thing, is because they're afraid of, that's why be careful of elected officials that love to talk to you one-on-one, but will not stand in front of you. Like Steve Leahy was in front of you. So you all heard how he answered a question about federal stuff, You might not have been satisfied with how he answered the question, but we all heard it together, so we know he didn't tell this person, say he's a screaming liberal, and he's got to come take it out with us, right? But he's a screaming liberal, oh yeah, we should enforce mask mandates everywhere. Oh no, we should never enforce mask mandates. Oh yeah, because the politicians do that. They tell people what they want to hear. Dennis, do you have something you want to say on school boards?
Well, those elections are next year, folks. And one other thing I was mentored on, all politics is local. And you're going to go from this year, you're probably going to have 70 to 80% of the people in Clermont County vote. Next year, your local races, you'll be lucky to have 25% of the people vote in that election. Yeah. That is pathetic. I'm just telling you, those are facts. And
I want to move on to the next topic, but real quick on that point, it's unbelievable, because my wife and I have a place in Florida, how different Florida is. They have like less than half the elections we have, because Florida makes all the elections be together. What happens in Ohio is you have this like Jekyll and Hyde election cycle where the off-season elections have this very low turnout and are very easy to manipulate because they're not on the same ballot when other people go. You're not like when we have the tax levies and stuff like that in Florida, they have to be on the November. Everything has to be on the primary or this. You're not allowed to have shit all over the place on the calendar.
That's because the legislators believe statistically they can keep Republicans in office because most of the non-party and liberal voters won't come in the off seasons. But I think they're learning that and they're now getting their people.
Not necessarily true. Okay, number 6 was annual assessment. So that was mine. So I want to be clear because you asked a question about it. We just did a thing where we said for 8 of the elected officials, the 3 of us, how did we rate them on integrity, innovation, and accomplishment? And the concept of doing that, like that the Central Committee said, hey, commissioners, we want you to come in and you tell us what you did that was an example of your integrity, which could mean things like advancing liberty, freedom in our county, your innovation, and then an accomplishment. Steve Leahy, I don't know, he did that, it's great, right?
Yeah.
He might have done it partially because we did a thing where we just did, elected officials should list off their accomplishments, okay? And so he did it. I'm not saying he wouldn't have done it without that, but it was good that he did it. But they never get asked that. We get to go to a meeting and we get to hear elected officials banter with each other and make dumb jokes. But they ask them to stand up there and say like, hey, so-and-so, stand up in front of us and tell us, what did you do to advance liberty and freedom? Okay, the whole COVID thing, you guys talk about COVID. I thought personally, the locking citizens out of commissioner meetings for 1.5 years, 2 years, not allowing them to speak, that was putting the plexiglass up all over the place when we're supposed to be conservative. Steve Leahy didn't put plexiglass up all over the place. So I think the elected officials should have been asked about that. How are your words about being conservatives against this stuff consistent with your actions of lock everybody out of the meetings and put the plexiglass up everywhere? So the idea here was assessing the elected officials on a regular basis, probably an off year or midterm, because it would dovetail, Bill, with your thing about like repercussions, would be not that we're necessarily do that with elected officials just as an endorsement, but to give them ideas for improvement. I think what we did was a good thing. First time anybody did it. It's on, you can watch it on Facebook or YouTube. But, and maybe, we joke, say, we don't know who the hell's going to watch it, but the elected officials will watch it. Mm-hmm. Because I want to see what did they say about me. But that alone, if that happened, would turn the tables, because right now I think the elected officials largely see the Central Committee as slave to them. versus that they are servants of us. Okay, so they've lost that dimension. Okay, so that's my.
Was
Yes,
Sheriff
sir.
Leahy evaluated in that?
No.
No, Stratton was.
Yeah.
We didn't evaluate him or Debbie Klepper because they're on the way out.
Okay.
But we evaluated Rudd and Stratton. You, Dennis, we evaluated you too at the end. You see it? At the end.
Chris gave you all F's. He gave you all F's.
I used to get that in high school.
You too, huh?
You know,
Do you guys have some, well, before we do, anything you want to add to my rant about this annual assessment of officials?
I don't think there needs to be a lot of discussion. It's very simple. We just need to do it. And it should be done. I mean, that's.
It should also be done, and I think we actually did it in a relatively positive spirit.
Yeah.
Not in a like, let's go hatchet job these people. Although that happened some, but on the point of, if you watched it, it would be like, you know, if I asked my wife, you know, write down a list of things I could do better, you know, then I might want to react to some of this, because if I did, it would be better.
I think one of the areas.
Not enough paper in the room.
One of the problems that we have assessing.
I got the keys.
And I say that this is an issue with the elected officials is they're not transparent enough to know what they're doing. So it causes us to have to evaluate them and maybe be wrong sometimes. Like, you know, Linda Fraley, I evaluated her an F on integrity because there's a lot of things I know about her. She comes off as somebody that she's really not. I hate to say it. And it hurts because I thought she was somebody she isn't. But I gave her a B on job performance. Whether it's her or her staff, regardless, the auditor's office was ran well. I think it's important that if we're going to evaluate people, that we take our personal grudges out of it and properly evaluate them. I mean, I could dislike somebody's integrity, but they could be doing a good job. I mean, isn't that what happens with Trump? People don't like Trump's integrity, so they evaluate everything about Trump as an F. Well, you could say Trump's integrity may be low, but his job performance is A and A. So, I mean, I would have rated Trump probably a C or a D on integrity. I would have, because of his history of the Democrat Party and some things, but I would have given him an A in the other two categories because that'd be me being honest. I'm fully supportive of Trump, but there's things that I felt that have happened from an integrity standpoint that have been a problem. But I need a president that's going to fix this country. Not a president's afraid of hurting somebody's feelings.
Okay, so this assessment, I just want to comment. I think Trump has high integrity because I think integrity is not where you've been, but it's where you are. So one of the things, like Chris Stratton resigned from the Central Committee because of being pissed off about the way the Central Committee operates, that was a sign of integrity. The fact that he had been on the Central Committee for a long time before doing that, you know, the fact that Trump was a Democrat and then switched, because I think one of the things none of our elected officials can do is stand up and admit they made a mistake. Say they were wrong. I have changed. And sometimes we can be our own worst enemy because we go tell them, you're flip-flopper, okay? There's a difference between flip-flopper and somebody that realizes my policy view was wrong and I've changed it, okay?
It's accountability.
Because I'm trying to do the best I can. And so integrity, I like that J.C. Watts or whatever, then he got in trouble for some integrity thing. When he says, like, integrity is what you do when they're not looking. You know, integrity is being willing to stand up and say, I made a mistake and I'm sorry. That's integrity. Yeah. Because we all screw up. We all go down the wrong path. Okay. So the seventh thing is 2-year term central committees. 2-year terms, okay? Now, do you guys want to keep this as a separate one, or to her point, maybe say that's part of Central Committee member quality, is to switch to 2-year terms? We can keep it separate or put it together, right?
Chris, really, that is you need to amend our Constitution for that.
So we're not, that's how to do it. Yes. My point is that this can either be a standalone thing, or it is a tactic within better quality members. And I want you guys to decide. It wasn't one of my items, right? So, but the reason why I say this is they're going to put their coins in pouches.
Yeah.
And if you want, you know, you don't want them necessarily divided where they split them, you know, and then you get, you know, because of the way we structure it. Do you guys want to put it together?
I think you can throw it under number 4. And then, I mean, it's something that needs to be done to enhance the quality of the membership. Because I think if you're cycling through the Central Committee membership, I mean, reality is you're not supposed to be spending a ton of money to run for central committee. In fact, you really shouldn't spend more than a couple $100, maybe a mailer, reach out to your people. But we were able to raise, I don't know, what was it, Chris? $5,000, $6,000 against you to run?
I don't know, a lot of money got spent on me.
Yeah.
And I'm the only central committee member I know of that had a professional campaign consultant trying to take me out of.
Yeah, we had all the people out of the woodwork coming. I mean, Cody Rizzuto was like,
on
oh,
election day, there were all these people at the polling location and me, like this big gaggle of people supporting my opponent. It's like, I'm like, I have no fucking idea what's going to happen. Okay? And then I won by like 2/3.
Yeah.
You know, so that had to have been a sad day for some people.
Oh, it was, because it honestly was the belief that if they spent enough money and raised enough money that they could beat you. They didn't understand the ties you have with your neighborhood and that you're liked, because you can't be.
Or that professional hit piece campaign mailers, like a congressional race, might not be as effective in your neighborhood.
Well, that doesn't work, because he beat me with it.
He didn't have the postage, pre-sorted postage 6x8 postcards.
Oh, no.
Okay?
No.
All right, so we have 6 items. I'm watching the clock, okay? So what we're gonna do is I want you guys to take your chips, and I don't know if my wife's done with this back here. Okay.
I have something I want to ask. Yeah, Chris, can we not have some questions before? I mean, audience participation hasn't really occurred, and there are some people that would like to ask some questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
I forgot how many you said were on the central committee. I want to apologize.
168 precincts. That doesn't mean, right now, there's like 153, because there's open precincts. 168 races. So it's on your ballot every 4 years, and when you go to vote, 168 precincts, there's about 30 to 40 that nobody runs for. You know, so there'll be 30 or 40 that are not
So you
open.
replace all of them every 4 years, or
Yes.
Yeah, but most of them, it's like.
They'll be voted on in 26.
Okay. To me, a 4-year term might be too long. I think a 2-year term is too short. You have your learning years.
There's only 2 options in the law, 2 years and 4 years.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of this stuff is very, you know, this is the way it is. Those are your 2 options.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, because I think if we're going to, the discussion will be more interesting after we do this exercise, okay? I'm going to hand these bags around. And this is, you put whatever coin you want. You got a 10, a 5, and a 1. So look up at those things. Whatever you think is your top thing, you want to put your 10 in. Whatever you think is your second thing, you want to put your 5 in. And whatever you think is your third thing is a 1, is the 1. And I would ask you, don't put all your chips in for the same thing. Pick 3 separate things, so half of the list. Okay, I can't force you to do that. You can put all your chips in. But I'm going to start handing them around. So the first one I'm going to hand around, and that my wife put tags on the front, and that item 1, which is engagement and outreach. If you think that's your top thing, now by the way, 3 of them you're not going to put a chip in, right? Don't get all excited and put your chips in. Think about which one is your top, second, and third. So the first one passing around is outreach. Second one is fixing the meetings, follow the Constitution. Third one is retool the endorsement process. Fourth one is Central Committee quality members, 2-year terms, whatever. Fifth one is school boards, get involved in school boards. And then the 6th one is elected official annual assessments. So just pass those around. The numbers are on the front of them. Don't steal the chips out of them.
Does all Miami Township vote on the Milford School Board? The whole township.
Okay, and then when they get to the back, we can
small that's in Loveland, like over where Gene lives, it's Loveland. It's a very small, unbelievable.
Are you deciding whether it's
just a little small piece?
I can understand the city of Milford being liberal, but townships gotta go. They can.
Miami Township is liberal. Miami Township. They voted in favor of the abortion bill and the.
Come on, fast. Everybody go.
They voted in favor of both.
We're Americans. We can put gambling chips in the back.
That's right where it was. I couldn't believe Miami Township was going positive on both of them. That poor boys in this county.
When you get the bags done, give them the PJ. A finish bag. Once you've done it.
Really deep down.
And then we're gonna total them up real quick.
She wants, what she's doing is killing it. She's killing it.
Well, I didn't say it. The
Come
parties
on over here.
are sideways.
You got a bag, guy.
In less than 3 years.
Does anybody want to help her total?
You can't go through chairman. There's no, chairman sets the,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned, sets the agenda.
Fast. Get the bags over here. If anybody else is good at counting, just remember, put the chips on top, or right on the post-it on front what the total was for that bag.
Are you keeping up?
I have not.
Right on the front of the bag what the total was for that bag.
Yeah, we're getting kicked out.
We're getting kicked out. It's
12:30, yeah.
Didn't know that.
And then once you have a total, give the bag to me.
Yeah, I think it's free.
Oh, it's
And
free.
then start backing shit up. Okay? The total, add up.
We don't have any
So that's
signs left in it.
16,000. The total.
No.
Total. So multiply the amounts to the total dollar amount.
I know. Good, how are you doing?
Are you Dennis?
Good. Dennis Cooper.
Yeah.
Are you still on?
I'm still on. I just don't show up because the dictator.
I know. Because so many people aren't showing up because of that.
Okay.
Because of him.
I want to ask you a question. I want to run for
So
something.
this
You see my
one,
emails get through.
Oh, yeah.
I was told I can't have a committee list because I'm not a committee.
Louisa gave me crap
I
one day.
emailed Tommy briefly the other day, and I asked her if I could have a list.
if I get everybody's attention, so we're gonna get,
Sent an email.
Sheriff Lay's gonna come back in and
Yeah, I
turn
don't
the
have the list because, oh, it wasn't being distributed.
So while they're still counting, this
I was
one
on
is
that.
79 total.
Is that
I think I was on that email.
I like it.
No.
No, she told me, yeah. So I emailed her back and I said, show me the law.
Go to the Board of Elections.
We'll have to go next month.
This one is 82.
Okay. I suspected this.
Well, that will only be my second time. So
You wanna
the
go
next
with
month,
these in
the
bed?
following. Try to remove it. Before he removes me. I'll be suspended next.
That's all.
Now that it's legal, you're on the chopping block.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm next.
He'll just suspend the whole thing. He'll do it all by himself.
Well,
Okay,
we have
10,000.
that support.
86. Some of them are right. If
You
you
remember,
remember,
I was chair when you
10,000.
guys voted. I allowed that
4 is
vote to be
86.
made on the 2 or 4 year. I was kind of surprised. I thought
I thought we would get it.
I thought Becker was pushing that also in your township.
He was supposed to
Okay.
be.
And we have 5. What's number 5?
I thought he was for it.
Yeah, he was for the 2 year. He spoke to that.
Yeah.
What, BJ?
The vote was close.
What was number 5?
I can't remember.
I'm not looking to trespass.
It's a mess. It really is.
This 1,000.
And I don't know how to turn it around.
All right, so we'll,
I don't know if we'll make it to the next election.
No, he
all right, so here we go.
Anybody to vote him out, so.
Right.
Here we go. And then when we get done here, you know, if anybody wants to help hustle shit out the side door, then we can pick it up in the car, you know, from there. Okay, so I don't want to get in trouble and get banned. So the top 3 were,
5 is not right.
It's 1,000.
Put in a 10 and I put in a something.
well, that's what was written on the bag.
No, it's
1,000.
wrong.
1,000? There was one.
Yeah.
Who counted number 5?
I did. There was one chip inside that bag for 1,000. Yep.
Okay. All right, so, I don't think anybody moved them, maybe, we'll see. I don't think we've had election integrity issues here. Before we go nuts, but I don't think it would matter because the top 3,
It's still gonna be less than what?
the top 3 are central committee, quality, voter outreach, and following the Constitution. And they're demonstrably the top things. Right? Yes. In that mix. Those are the 3 biggest things. Any quick comments?
Leadership, integrity, You've got to get the right.
With them recognized, not just start your.
Oh, I'm sorry.
John,
Sorry,
I
Jay.
think if you fix number 4, everything else gets fixed.
Okay. Other comments?
Those three go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Number 4, 2-year terms is not long enough. Because I've been on it for 2 years and I'm just now figuring out what's going on. I need another 2 years to do something.
Okay. Well, we're not solving right now. We just have comments on, okay, yes, sir.
Where she just said the 2-year concept. Like I said, the biggest concept is education. She's been on it 2 years and she's just now finding out what can be done.
I think the biggest concept is character.
Yeah, well, there is a character. The character is the people that are sitting.
So it's not like we're running Congress. I just want to make it, it's not like we're running dang Congress, okay? We're running a committee, and part of it is just having respect, and that's what a lot of Robert's rules are. The Robert's rules fundamental principles are the same principles you would use interacting with your family. Everybody gets a right to talk. Everybody can put in their opinion. You don't tell, you lock people in a jail cell. Okay, so that is, any other quick comments? All right. If you want a Trump sign, we have Trump signs. I apologize. It's all Steve Leahy's fault. That son of a threw our whole schedule off. If he wanted to talk for an hour, we'd have social time now. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for coming. I want to thank Bill and Dennis, and hopefully we got somewhere.